Well, I'm amazed that Parramatta have taken him back. For Jared, I think it's just a miracle.
It's kind of like, in The Lion King when Simba comes back, and that's great for everyone. But in this case, it's more like Scar coming back.
Yeah,
it's like
right.
a fucked up Hamlet. Cameron Smith should be made to wear, I don't know, a really heavy headgear, just to bring him back to the field.
I've always advocated for a drug league where you could actually take whatever drugs you felt would help you to play better.
Isn't there a danger here, guys, that, they could be the Blues playing quite well high and then they're defending their red zone and suddenly James Roberts is ordering a hot dog on Deliveroo?
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Voluntary Tackle, the only NRL podcast that donated more than $1,000 to the victims who perished in the Roosters Penrith match. I'm your host, Aimon Brown, and today I'm joined by one recently exonerated suspect in a spate of Sydney rapes. Of course, I refer to Chip Jones.
One of the best words in the English language, really, exonerations. And
I never thought you were guilty.
no, well, I do appreciate that.
Now, we should say, Chip, we are without our good friend Xander Risotto, who has been relegated this week due to some ill discipline.
He was farried. I think that week will do him a world of good.
So he'll be relegated to a shittier podcast out at Campbelltown, and hopefully he'll be able to sharpen his game with slightly less witty blokes.
I think those guys actually have unwashed socks for Mike socks.
What Chip's referring to on this non-visual medium is the very shitty, what would you call these, mic covers, wind socks?
Well, it's supposed to be, wind socks or pooper stoppers, believe it or not.
Is that right? Yeah, I mean, you're a muso, Chip, so you might know this. But look, for me, I'm not familiar with the terminology. But essentially, to stop our popping peas, I've put a pair of my old dirty socks over the mics. And it seems to be doing a job. But it smells to high heaven.
Yeah, I wonder, that might have some reason why Xander pulled out late. I'm not sure.
Now, we should talk about this week's games and let the listeners know we're recording this on the Sunday evening just after the Tigers-Raiders game. Of course, the Raiders just tore the Tigers. A collection of new assholes in the second half after starting out by getting up to a 12-point lead. We're going to start this inversely, I think, this week, Chip.
That's a good idea.
Why don't we start with that Tigers game? How did you see it?
Mate, there were more video referee reviews than I have ever seen in a game. Phil Gould was spitting chips by the end of it. And he actually, at one point, said something like, let me see if I've got that here. He said, the video ref should be sacked immediately and never let into the box again.
I mean, that's not mincing his words.
That was on live TV.
I know. I think there might be repercussions.
Interesting to see the fallout.
I think there will be.
I don't think he was wrong, by the way, but nonetheless...
Yeah, it was a horrible decision about the grounding of a ball. I think the referee had called try, and yet the video ref overruled it without very much evidence.
It was a shocker, yeah, and it was a beautiful try too. It was a good passage
was
in
going
play.
to be.
Look, I thought, as you mentioned, the Tigers went out to an early lead. They got reeled in. Nice to see Josh Hodgson back for the Raiders.
It was almost instant when Josh Hodgson came on. He started the game from the bench and had a hand in a try within the first 8 milliseconds. And it never looked good from the Tigers from then on, did it?
No defence.
I guess they're missing a bit of talent. Obviously, no Benji Marshall there, no Josh Reynolds. They'll get Moses and By next week, so maybe it's not all doom and gloom. But the Tigers in the second half, I think some of them were throwing their hands up.
He was a bit of a dog, wasn't he, Moses Mbai?
A little bit of a dog, mate. And he's controlled that flea condition, which is obviously a good thing.
Crucial around Tigers.
Hygiene, basic hygiene. That'll set you up for life.
I mean, look, just start with brushing your teeth regularly. Have
and floss.
And floss.
I don't know if people realise this, but flossing is just as important as brushing.
Is that right?
It's the getting in between zone, and that's where the food ferments and the gum conditions come in. And it's been statistically proven that if you have gingivitis, you're not as effective as a fullback.
So basically, the Tigers game was good. I thought, the Raiders, the Raiders really overhauled them. It was nice to see Ricky Stewart trying to smile. He didn't get there, but
I think he actually pierced one of his coal sores. By
trying to smile.
Sort of expand.
Tell him
his
to
face.
floss, mate. Get some floss in there.
Tough.
Can you floss your coal sores? Does that help?
It would hurt.
It would hurt.
I wouldn't do it.
Right.
I don't think there's any medical evidence to suggest that would be a good idea. But
Okay. I'm an ideas man, but maybe I've gone overboard there.
Absolutely. In fact, you've caused a bit of an uproar on Twitter.
I have.
Chip,
I have.
by suggesting that the judiciary should be done away with in exchange for an honour system.
Yes, well, we did want to put that out there to our viewers and come up with the best 4 reasons why that was a stupid idea. But basically what came back to us was that, yeah, it's just a fucking stupid idea, mate. You got to let it. So I'll take that on the chin and say, okay, fair enough.
I'm going to say it was unanimous.
It was.
Too many people backing you.
We haven't actually had so many people come together on one issue before.
In a way, you're a great unifier.
Well, see, there's more to me than meets the eye, thankfully.
Now, the other game played today was the Knights taking on the Storm. The Storm running away with that one, 28 points to 10. Chip, obviously no Mitchell Pearce for the Knights. Kalen Ponga, again, scored a bit of a solo, but it's a bit like sticking the old finger in the dike, pardon the expression. It wasn't enough.
I don't think they like that these days.
It's hashtag me too.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore. Yeah. But 28 points to 10, too classy, the Storm, particularly in that second half.
Yeah, look, you're right. And look, they really do miss Mitchell. I think they've lost some structure. Pong is a great player, as you mentioned, but it's tough to be a one-man team.
Are we seeing the sort of resurgence of the Storm? Obviously, they had a bit of a flat start to the year, but last week I thought they were very good against the Broncos. And this week again, they've proven themselves to be sort of getting that sheen back in attack. They were a bit clunky for most of the year, but people like Riley Jack starting to really fit in to the team. Cameron Smith, obviously great to have during the Origin period. He's proved to be a great asset. And guys like Kafusi, who were amazing last year in the back end of the final series, they're starting to hit holes. When Kafusi starts to run at a hole like a rampaging psychopath...
You get out of the way.
Just get out of the way.
Just go home.
It just opens up like the Sydney Heads, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And, another really nice thing about that game was watching Addo-Carr in open space. I mean, there's nothing really like that.
No. He runs about as fast as a leaf blowing in a really strong gust of wind.
Yeah, the kind of hurricane where that leaf will actually break glass or something stupid,
right,
like really quick.
Exactly. It's like a leaf that's been souped up on steroids. Like if it hit you, you'd probably die.
Yeah, maybe you could branch out a bit and
You couldn't resist, could you?
Not really. But no, look, it was a good game. I don't see the Knights really coming back for this season. I think Mitchell will be out for too long. They've lost a bit of cohesion. To answer your question around Melbourne, do I think they're coming back? Well, yes, maybe they're improving some. Can they win the comp? Look, I'm not convinced.
There's about 4 teams, as I see it, vying for that 8th position. It seems like the top 7 might be decided, but you've got the Broncos, the Knights, the Raiders and the Tigers. The Tigers obviously took a big dent in confidence today. And the Knights are still in there, but you'd have to say the Raiders and the Broncos would be the favourite to take that 8th spot.
Yeah, look, we did have a brief chat about that, didn't we, Aimon? And, we've highlighted the 4 teams here, as you mentioned, Tigers, Knights, Broncos, Raiders. Maybe it's an opportunity for us to put out a poll with some more meaning than an honour system for the judiciary.
Well, funny you mentioned that, Chip, because I do have a poll here that we put out a couple of days ago, and we'll read those results later in the show. But it's very telling. Unfortunately, it's not good news for Tigers fans. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, they weren't impressive today.
No,
that's for
and
sure.
I love the Tigers. I think they've shown a lot of grit and determination this year, but I think that lack of depth has really started to toll.
You make a really good point there, and I think this ties into some comments we made, being beloved Roosters fans that we are, about how the season shapes up. And I wonder whether teams like the Tigers, St George as well, funnily enough, come to mind in this bracket, which is that you can come out of the blocks racing, but it's like you've only got so much stamina. It's like one of those old computer games with the bar for stamina or lifeline or whatever
like
it is.
Wolfenstein.
Exactly. So you're running out early. So you're getting ahead of the pack, but you haven't really measured yourself against how many weeks in the season, for example, or in the finals. I don't see the Tigers doing it. I don't see the Knights. The Broncos I haven't liked since the start of the year virtually. My tip would be the Raiders, but more important than either of us is our listeners. So what was their...
The Broncos came in at 47%.
Is that right?
32% for the Raiders, 16% for the Tigers, and a lowly 5% for the Newcastle Knights, which we've understand was a vote by Ben Kennedy, which probably, I'd say, prohibits that from being counted. So punters well and truly behind the idea that the Broncos will make that top 8.
Look, I guess this is an interesting thing when it comes to streaming a podcast online. We're not really bound by the barriers of the state, so we must be very popular in Brisbane, because there's no other reason really for them to win that poll. I don't see that.
You're right, mate. Maybe this is saying a little bit more about our reach I also think it's because we tend to say quite racist things, and obviously that flies a lot
Yeah,
better
we
in
connect.
Queensland.
Yeah, we connect with that market.
Now, on the Broncos, Chip, they were victorious, 20 points to 16 over the Sharks. Now, this was particularly galling for me, Chip, because this was the one leg of my 5-leg multi, which went down, and it cost me $200 for a $10 stake.
Yep.
A very arm wrestly type of match. The Sharks fought their way back into the game to lead, only for the game to be stolen from them in the final couple of minutes. Sharks, they've won quite a bit over the last 6 weeks, but they've won in very clunky fashion
Very
almost
tight
each and every
games,
time.
yeah.
Maybe barring one game. I think they handed Newcastle Knights their own arse. But you'd have
What
to
do you
say,
do with that, by the way?
when you get handed your own arse?
Yeah, where do you put it?
You probably wipe it if it
Well,
needs
for a start,
wiping. It depends if you've just been to the toilet.
Yeah.
But,
How would you know?
well, there'd be residue. I guess there'd be,
Oh, I
there'd be
see.
anal
I see
residue.
what- I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd preferably have your ass ripped off you when it's clean.
Yeah.
Would be a good thing.
Well, it's nice to get it back if it's clean. You don't want to get it. I mean,
Well, then
it,
you'd be arseless.
it would be a shame if you gave it away clean and it came back dirty. You'd have to wonder, what have you been doing with it?
That's true. And if you walked around arseless, you'd look a little bit like Chris Houston.
Yeah, no
You
one
don't
wants
want that.
No.
So yeah, I do worry about the Sharks because although they've got that rugged, tough team that know how to sort of win ugly, I think they can only sort of wear for so long, can't it? And I think that was a game they're entitled to win, and they didn't. And the Broncos, on the other hand, weird team. I mean, look, they weren't that great last week, but they were much better last night. Sort of saved up one of their better performances of the year. Darius Boyd's obviously playing angry because he's been left out of the Queensland Origin team.
Didn't he
And
retire?
technically, although he sort of took his bat and ball and went home. He was a
Okay.
bit pissed off about
But he
being
didn't
left
get
out.
selected.
Yeah.
Could he do a sex change? Because I know that the female state of Origin's coming up. He'd probably walk into that team.
I don't think he's playing well enough.
They're not going to pick him.
I don't think
Okay,
so.
fair enough.
I'd leave him out. Now, another game on the card, Chip, we had the Dragons running out 32 points to 8 victors over the Sea Eagles. Now, probably not surprising because is there anyone left for the Sea Eagles?
Oh, look, mate, I think they're all busy at the moment putting shit on Cherry Evans, or at least Watmo's certainly decided to... I mean, he's actually backed Hastings. I mean, that's got to tell you
That's saying something. When you're willing to stick your neck on the line and say, I prefer Jackson Hastings,
Yeah.
then you know you're probably not a good bloke.
Well, one thing I did read into that was that, you know, it seemed like Cherry Evans had said to Watmo at one point, you know, I'm only on $100,000 a year or something, and I'm really worth 500,000 or whatever. And Watmo said to him, well, just stick it out, mate. You will get your shot, and you know we'll support you. And Cherry, no, fuck that. I'm going to go up and kick the door in, and I want the money.
I want the money now.
You know, I
Did
think
he do like the Jerry Maguire show me the money?
yeah, he may well have done. I mean, Jerry Maguire, if you remember, was actually the manager of the player. So maybe Daly has his own Jerry.
Well, does he manage himself? He'd probably. I get the sense he would call up the CEO of the club and just yell out, "Show me the money," but obviously with a lot more profanity and a lot more
Yeah.
threats.
Yeah.
You know, because he's a bit of a dickhead.
Perhaps without even like signalling who he is, why he's calling, just yelling at
Just
him
go,
basically.
check my caller ID, you stupid fuck.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah,
What's the
I'm
story?
sure he threw in a lot of C-bombs.
It's a landline. Yeah, excuses, mate.
And then he would digress into why he had a landline in 2018.
Yep.
What an
I'm the
arsehole.
CEO, mate. You know, it's a landline.
Yeah, it's classic Cherry Evans, really. But they are struggling, mate. And on the other side of the coin, we've got the Dragons, who sort of the wheels fell off about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Obviously flying high for the most of the season, the April premiers, as Mark Latham likes to call them. But it looks like potentially a bit of a return to form, but it's hard to gauge when it's against a team that hates itself.
You're quite right. You know, perhaps we could take this opportunity to say g'day to Mark.
G'day, Mark.
Um,
That sounded like one of those Lowe's ads. It was a bit shit.
yeah, well, I don't know. Look, Mark, if you need something better, mate, just get in touch. Abuse Aimon.
Yep.
As you well know, I'm more than happy to promote that idea.
Yep.
For reasons that we have discussed. But nonetheless,
And also, Mark, if you need a pair of slacks, there's 3 for the price of 2 going at Bournemouth Junction's Lowe's at the moment.
at Lowe's. Yeah, look, the Dragons really turning the screws there, particularly in the second half. Look, they are playing well. Yes, they're a title contender. Yes, I see them being there. They're obviously going to make the 8. They're going to be in the finals. I just think they've come off a step or two in the last few weeks, and particularly
What do you put that down to?
fatigue.
Okay.
I actually put
You
that
think
down
they punched out too hard,
well,
too early?
season fatigue. You know, I wonder how much work has been done on this, but there's week to week fatigue, but there is season fatigue. Once you start getting into this latter part of the season, you really want to be building going into the finals. But it's at the very point where you're starting to get a few injuries. You're not as sharp. Look, for their sake, I hope I'm wrong. But I just see them losing a step, and I wonder how much that's going to hurt them.
They could be carrying a few injuries too, Chip, because I know Ben Hunt has struggled on that one leg. He hasn't quite recovered from that, and it's sort of thrown them off kilter a little bit.
Yeah, it is interesting you bring Ben Hunt in there, because after Billy's dummy spit over, not wanting to play Origin anymore because he doesn't... I'd have to say Ben Hunt's probably the best player on one leg.
He hops to it. Now, the next game on the card, Chip, was the Bulldogs-Titans game. What did you make of that?
The Roosters and Penrith, they're coming together at this time in the year where you really want to see what these heavyweight contenders... I mean, that's what we're watching rugby league for, right?
It was a hell of a game, this one, wasn't it? It was a real game of attrition, and I might have likened this one when I was watching it to the Crimean War. There was plenty of sepsis, plenty of infections, and certainly plenty of deaths.
And also, one side was just dominant.
It was the first time the Sydney Roosters have really clicked all year. They won 32 points to 6. Going into this round, I have to say, as a fan, I was a bit worried. I remember thinking, why the fuck are we favourites? That doesn't make any sense. And then all of a sudden, Jared Warrior-Hargraves decided it's 2011 and started playing well again.
For 80 minutes.
80 minutes. I mean, normally he can't string 8 seconds together, Jared.
Look, it's kind of restored my faith in all things Trent. And to Trent we pray, really.
Yeah, I do. 3 times a day I face west, which is weird because we're eastern suburbs.
Face east, mate.
I know. I like doing things inversely.
Yep. Okay. Look, I wonder whether Trent actually took the blinders off a little bit. And I think this comes back to the concept we've discussed a little bit, which has been the minor premiership syndrome. I wonder whether Trent has decided to actually pull the players back some mid-season and try and combat that season fatigue that we mentioned before, so that they're freshening up and they're really hitting straps at the right time of year. And interestingly enough, I think that was borne out in the injury toll in a strange way, because there were a lot of injured players. You'll remember that Latrell Mitchell went down with a shocking neck injury and had to be crumpled neck, stretchered from the field, which was a worry for everybody in New South Wales.
Dylan Napa lost a shin.
Dylan Napa lost his leg.
Gillard lost his jaw.
Campbell Gillard broken jaw. And also Blake Ferguson had a...
No, he's never had hair, mate.
He's never had hair. No. Okay, so that wasn't like an injury.
Yeah, it's not like he went into the game
with hair.
With a flourish of locks and lost his locks.
Well, I thought he really shone in that game.
His scalp did.
And, what's interesting is Mitchell went down with a neck complaint and had to be stretchered off. And before the end of the game, they were saying, no, mate, he's sweet. Napa went off with... 6. They were saying 6 weeks, and Trent's come out. No, mate, he's sweet, virtually. I don't know whether he's going to miss weeks or not, but
I think he will.
I would think
he's
so.
In a fair bit of pain out there.
Blake Ferguson was fine. Hair losses, you don't lose any games for that. Campbell Gillard, broken jaw, mate, you're out. So it was basically a New South Wales bash up. We just bashed each other.
And James Maloney walked away with a lower back complaint. So
that's right.
From a New South Wales Blues perspective, outside of Dylan Napa, it was a bit of carnage. It was like almost watching someone self-harm, wasn't it? We were sort of like the, borderline gothic teenage girl who was just slitting her own wrists for attention.
Yep, that's right.
Which is probably taking a metaphor too far.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't know. I never really paid attention to her. But look, I thought it was a really great game, very high level, low mistakes. I think the Roosters' completion rate was like one of the highest of the year for them.
Yeah, we
very
actually
impressive.
looked, and I feel like I'm going out on a limb here, but we looked slick, which we have not looked slick the whole year. We've always looked very clunky and just managed to sort of fall over the line like someone, like basically a collective of Down syndrome people.
I always thought it was a bit like if you have a wheelchair and then there's a step at the end of the finish line.
We just can't quite get up.
Well, you can't get up the step, but you'll fall over the step.
Yep.
Which is where the finishing line is. So you'll get there, but it's not really
Didn't
impressive.
Fernley do that a lot in the Paralympics? I think that's how he used to win.
Is that right?
Yeah, he'd be pretty good in the chair, but he would get out and roll the rest of the way, and that's where he had the edge.
Yeah. Campbell Gillard did have a great game before he went off. but he just got bashed pretty early, so he didn't have much of a chance to really do anything.
Yeah, he ran into the shoulder of Hargraves, who was just playing like a man
Was that in
possessed.
like the third minute or something?
Oh, it was first half. I can't quite remember the minutes. I was too busy
Cheering.
ejaculating. Yeah, because I was so happy about the win. But I will say that it was just a truly dominant performance, and one that we haven't presented so far. But I don't know if this is too early to say. The Penrith Panthers, obviously big raps on them. They've performed really well this year. But you do wonder how many games they've really dominated teams who were genuine title contenders. Now, they've beaten a lot of teams outside of the 8, and I'm not saying that they're not title contenders, but they came up against a Roosters team who decided for the first time this year to really put their weight on the line, and they came up well short. I know it's only 1 week, but they'll have a lot of soul searching to do next week, and they'll be still searching for the lower mandible of Campbell Gillard.
I don't know whether they're going to find that mandible.
He'll be mandible-less.
He'll be mandible-free.
Is that a good thing? Is that like being sugar-free?
Well, it's tough to floss. I know that when you're missing a
I
mandible.
thought it'd be easier access.
Well, it might be easier on the top half, but that lower half, you can't find it. You can't floss it.
Be like
I mean,
MH370.
it's a bit
Where
like
is
your
it?
ass. Is it going to come back dirty?
Another game on the card, Chip. We had the Warriors taking on the Cowboys up in Queensland at the very affectionately referred to 1300 Smile Stadium. So catchy. But they emerged victors, 23 points to 16. Now, this was a game I'm pretty sure, I don't know if I'm quoting out of turn here, I'm pretty sure the Cowboys were favourites to win this. I'm not entirely sure why, which is why I tipped the Warriors in my multi. But I'd say this could be the moment in the season where we officially sign off on the Cowboys not making the 8.
Then they're not going to get there.
They're gone.
Which is really interesting because we've seen in the last couple of years a few times where teams would win a comp and then struggle to get even into the bottom half of the table. They're like languishing like right at the bottom.
It's a weird one with the Cowboys because it's not as though there's been a massive turnover on the roster, and they made the grand final last year without Matt Scott, without Jonathan Thurston. And here we are in 2018 with both of those players there from the beginning, and they've just never gelled. I think a big part of it, to be honest, is Michael Morgan, who's carried an injury for most of the year, and he just is not the same player. He's the guy who really, I thought, along with Taumalolo, was just pivotal in the Cowboys pushing their way through the final series.
Laid the groundwork for them.
It's going to be a very interesting future ahead for them in the next 12 months. Wonder if Paul Green will even continue coaching there.
Well, it's funny you say that because Paul Green, to me, just looking at him in the last game, some of the crosses to the coach's box and stuff
He's
like that.
quite short, isn't he?
He's very short, and he's got that look in his eyes he's got that faraway look in his eyes, but it's not like the Tom Cruise or Robert Redford, that faraway look which says I'm intricate, interesting, and sexy. It's that faraway look that says I really don't know what to do.
Yeah, he looks a bit like a squashed Mark Hamill, I've always thought. If you compressed Mark Hamill in a vice, you'd kind of get Paul Green.
So with the Warriors, here's a team that was billed at the start of the season almost to be the team to beat up there with the Dragons, and they did occupy, revolving 1-2 spot for a little while. And Sean Johnson's back. He's starting to play pretty well. I mean, he's not been bad. I wouldn't say he's out of form or anything like that. But I don't know. Maybe you can help me out with this, but I didn't find them that impressive.
I mean, look, the Warriors of yesteryear would not have travelled at this point of the season up to a Cowboys side with Jonathan Thurston in it and
That's
won.
true. That's true.
I mean, that's never been a road trip that the Warriors have ever relished. In fact, no road trip has been. So this is a different year. Whether or not they're the real deal in terms of taking the premiership, it's a bit harder to say at this stage. But to me, they're definitely a finals contender, and I'm interested to see what they can do in September because they will be there.
You're definitely right. I've always kind of equated the Warriors to Roman Polanski. They struggle to travel.
So you mean that they sort of get away with sex crimes?
No, I mean they find it difficult to travel.
I get you. Sorry, I've misconstrued that entirely. I just thought you were referring to Russell Packer. Now, the next game on the card, we have the Rabbitohs taking on the Eels. Now, interesting, a very high scoreline here, Chip. It was 42 points to 24 in favour of the Rabbitohs. Now, in the one sense, the Eels exposed the Rabbitohs' defence and showed it was possible to score quite a few tries against them. And on the other hand, the Eels leaked almost every time the South Sydney Rabbitohs went to their right-hand side.
Pretty much can sum up the Eels' lack of defence in 2 words, which actually happen to be pronouns,
Okay.
which is Michael Jennings.
Yeah, poor old Michael. In a game with
struggling.
18 Jenningses, he was clearly the shittest.
He was the worst. And Michael Jennings is a representative footballer.
Well, he was, yeah.
He was.
I mean, he'll never be again.
He probably won't be.
No, I mean, she's not a footballer at the moment. At one point, Michael Jennings was arguably the best centre in the world. And this year, when we were discussing the New South Wales Origin team, not one person even bothered to utter the words Michael
Didn't even
Jennings.
get a look in.
No.
Yeah. And, you know, when you look at even some really quality players that aren't being hyped up for rep footy, so your Adam Reynolds, I mean, his kicking game is just unbelievable.
Adam Reynolds has gone to a completely new level this year. I mean, I've always been a fan of his talent. I've never thought that guy lacked talent. I just thought he lacked, ligaments because he's always injured.
Yeah, always thought he kind of lacked free skin space as well. He's kind of like covered up quite a bit of it.
He is, and he's always strapped, a bit like a mummy.
Yeah, and where he's not strapped is tats.
Yeah, that's right. He's basically like a really hardcore pharaoh, isn't he?
Yeah, a shorter, whiter pharaoh.
Who looks like the pharaoh could belong to some kind of bikie gang.
Well, it's hard to get injured parking a bike, but if you are Adam Reynolds, you're kind of not short enough to get on the bike.
No,
you're not
you
tall
need a
enough.
boost.
You're not tall enough to get on the bike, so it can fall on you.
Yeah, and we know Adam Reynolds' medical history that he would be crushed severely.
Well, I've actually seen his medical records.
Have you? Is it the whole dossier?
I'm not supposed to have, but
Okay.
I have.
So where do we see the South Sydney Rabbitohs, mate, this year? They've been in scintillating form for about 2 months. Hard to say it's a flash in the pan. Now, as a Roosters fan, getting a bit worried because I don't like seeing the guys from Redfern do well at all.
Look, you're 100% right. It's now getting to the stage where you can't write them off.
You can certainly rip on them. You can still abuse them, but you can't write them off.
You can say that you don't like them.
Yep.
You can say that they're red and green pricks. I think South's starting to hit straps at the right time of year, and you want to keep an eye out for them.
I agree with you, mate, although it shouldn't stop us from starting a Kickstarter movement to have them banned out of the comp again. More after this. Now, welcome back to the voluntary tackle. Interesting breaking news today, Chip, that the NRL has announced an NRL Magic Round in 2019, where 8 games will happen in one weekend at Suncorp Stadium.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Why?
It's an interesting one. In fact, we have that very similar sentiment posted on Twitter by one P. Gould. Now, he took to Twitter straight away.
Now, I
to say
assume this is Phil.
This is Phil.
This is Phil.
Yeah.
G'day, Gus.
G'day, Gus. He said, he put the...
He actually said,
He actually said, with
okay.
3 M's and a full stop. He said, I don't get
Did
it.
he have a U?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yeah. He didn't just say,
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, he didn't find the announcement tasty.
Yeah.
He said,
Plus, you really want a vowel in there?
Yeah. I said, I don't get it. He said, 9 teams in Sydney, 2 others only a short bus ride away, but let's take them all to Brisbane for a game. Didn't New South Wales state government just commit billions to new Sydney stadiums to rebuild? ? Let's take the business dollars to Brisbane instead. Am I missing something ? Now, that's generated a fair bit of heat on Twitter. I'm going to throw to you straight away, Chip. What do you think of that idea? Do you think it's a bit perplexing?
Look, it is perplexing, but I have to say that we have spent billions on the upgrade of Allianz. At the same time, we're making a complete meal of driving anywhere in Sydney at the moment to put this tram system in. At the same time, the company that we've hired to put the tram system in is now suing the government for billions
2 of them, I believe.
because we told them that we ripped up the old tram tracks, and we didn't.
So we lied.
So
That doesn't sound like our state government.
it's basically come to the point where rugby league has almost given up on not the people of Sydney and not the teams of Sydney, but just getting around in Sydney. I think it's basically like saying, let's have all the games in Brisbane because you can get there.
So you're saying essentially the NRL is going to abandon Sydney because of our poor infrastructure issues?
Until we get it fixed.
Yep. I have a bigger problem with this, Chip, and that's the fact that this has all been played out of Suncorp. Now, if they wanted to boost crowds out of any one stadium in Queensland, The poor old fucking Titans. They could use 8 games out of the fucking Rabina.
That's a bit rough, isn't it? Like, give them one.
They get about 1,000 people there.
Give
If
them
they
a
got
home
8
game.
games, they'd have 8,000 people.
They'd have 8,000.
If you've done the maths on it, I have.
Yeah.
I've checked my sums.
I can see that you've clearly.
In fact, I fucked it up. I think it's 9,000. I forgot to carry the 1. But I mean, I think they're going to get a lot more people there.
I think it's 8,001.
Is it? Probably. Have you done the Pythagoras on that?
I haven't. But if you're
Hold on.
carrying.
Sine,
Hang on.
cos. I don't know. I think they're a shit team, basically. I pressed equals,
Yep.
and it said they're a pretty shit franchise.
They're actually shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they need our help. They need the NRL's help.
Can't argue with that.
So I think in one sense that's a poor idea. I also think that maybe if they're going to push ahead with this chip about having 8 games at once, or at least over one weekend.
Could we have 8 at once? Now,
I
that
think
would
there should be.
fun.
I think there should be 8 simultaneously.
Could we actually have the fields go side by side? So when you actually have those, in the corner tries, you've got to watch that you don't impinge on the other field.
Maybe they should be at sort of 45-degree angles to each other, so that there's a couple of games going, but you have to watch the collisions. There'd be a lot of obstructions.
Oh, I see.
There'd be a shitload of second man plays.
Yeah. How would the video ref go with that? Because they'd probably.
I'd be fucking awful.
Yeah.
I mean, they're awful now.
I wonder whether Wayne Bennett has pulled in a few strings with whoever owns Suncorp Stadium, and he said, "Look, how about I get 8 games here in one weekend, and you let me keep my job?"
So you think, in a way, this is the humble art of distraction. Wayne Bennett knows his job's under threat, and so he's sort of concocted this idea to sort of mesmerise the NRL public. And if you see 8 games going on at once, people will forget that he's just an old guy who probably should retire.
I do believe that Craig Bellamy signed an extension with Melbourne after this super weekend of football was announced in Brisbane.
Hard to say. I think it all broke I think he just preceded it. But I mean, I hate to correct you when you are wrong after you said it so many times. But potentially, it was all at the same time.
Maybe he got wind of it.
I think he might have.
Maybe he got some wind.
Yeah. He's very
and,
gassy.
He gassed out and realised
He eats a lot of Scotch eggs.
Oh, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
it's not good
beans.
for your intestinal
Yeah.
health. Not sure how that relates to the Brisbane Magic weekend idea, but I certainly, a big shout out to Craig Bellamy. If you are suffering, IBS or some kind of intestinal cramps, get it checked. It could be cancerous. But we should probably have another bit of a crack at this one too, Chip, because I actually think it's greedy if Brisbane were to hog this idea entirely. And in fact, I know we've taken a number of games to the country this year. If they're going to do 8 games in Brisbane,
Great idea.
to be egalitarian,
Great idea.
we need to have 8 games in fucking Mudgee.
Love it.
We need to have 8 games in Gladstone.
Exactly.
We need to have 8 games in Uluru,
The only
even though
place,
that's not even a suburb.
yeah, well, let's play
Just on top of the rock.
Yeah, see, that's going to alienate a few of our Indigenous listeners.
They're not going to like that.
They're not going to like it
Because I don't even want people
It's a
scaling
sacred
it.
rock,
Yeah.
mate.
Oh, it's highly insensitive.
Maybe-
But I need to be fair.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
staunchly
you're
fair.
equally offensive to everyone.
I've always
I
said
think
that.
that's what's really interesting about
Yeah.
you. It's not easy to do that. I've struggled. I've tried.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
I take that as a compliment.
do it- you
and
do
I
it-
also say fuck you.
Yeah,
because
at
I
the
like
same
to,
time.
Yeah,
So now
like
you've
to be
offended
polite.
me as well as everyone else. I mean, how do you do it?
I try to.
Very
I
impressive.
say a lot of bad things about your mum in particular. I actually have another little tangent on this too, Chip. I feel like you can't call it an NRL Magic Round without magicians.
Yeah, well, that's a great point.
There should be maybe, and just hear me out here, along with the 8 games, we should maybe have a wild card team of magicians.
Ooh.
Just like 17 of Australia's best magic people.
How would that translate in the hard-hitting world of rugby league? It'd be amazing to see.
It'd be tough. I think they'd be good with the sleight of hand, the
Yep.
deft passes.
Maybe the dummy.
Yeah, but when it comes to putting their body on the line, I think they'd probably get really seriously injured.
One thing, I have never seen rugby league players move so slow as when they get sin binned.
Yeah, look, I'm all
fuck is
for sin bins if it's legitimate, Chip. But we need to do something about the amount of time it takes a sin bin player to exit the field. It's getting a bit silly.
Are they trying to chew up time? Is that?
Oh, they're deliberately wasting time.
What do you think?
They're taking certainly a step out of the book of Cameron Smith, on this one. But I'm wanting to tax your brain on this, and I know you are a brains trust,
Yep.
which is a bit weird because I'm referring to your brain as a collective when clearly it's a singular, unless you've had some horrible accident and you had your cerebellum, cut in half.
Well, my synapses are cumulative, so...
I don't even know what that means. I want to know how the fuck we speed up these bastards from leaving the field.
Let me tell you. If you get 10 minutes on the sin bin, okay, the time it takes you to get off the field is actually added to your sin binning.
Can I say this? And I mean this without any hint of sarcasm. It's genius.
Yep, appreciate
I love
that.
the idea.
Yep. So if it takes you 10 seconds to get off, you're now sin bin for 10 minutes and 10 seconds.
Fucking love
If
it.
it takes you 11 minutes to get off, you're off for 11 minutes. And you should be timed from the moment that the ref raises his finger and says, you better fucking park your ass on the bench for a while,
Yep.
matey, to get off the field. I'd like to go back to see players running off the field.
Just getting the fuck out of there.
Just run off. I mean, Addo Carr would be going for 10 minutes and 3 seconds.
That'd be brilliant, even if he was on the far side of the field. 'Cause
Just
he's that
making
fast.
it. Just getting there.
Be fantastic. I actually love that idea. In fact, you've thrown far too much logic in there for my liking. Because I was thinking...
I'm sure you'll fix that.
I'll fix that really quickly because that's legitimately a good idea. No, I was thinking potentially, Chip, we could just offer a few incentives, maybe to players on an individual basis. So I'd give you a few examples.
Sure.
Say, for example, Billy Slater gets sin bin, which is certainly not outside the realms of possibility. We could say, look, Billy, if you get off in the next 10 seconds... we'll offer you a soul.
What would he do to get one of those back again? He'd probably move grease lightning there.
He hasn't had one for years.
Who else could we talk about? Maybe we could have a particular nice pure bag of rack on the side for old Kenny Dow.
Well, you'd have to say to Kenny Dow, here's your baggie, but it's going to be sort of outside of the realms of public view.
Or better yet, here's your baggie. You've got to get into the change room to use it.
Exactly. And
Off you go.
And guess what, Kenny? We've also shut off all the surveillance cameras, so you can just knock yourself out. What about with Corey Norman as another example, Chip? We could offer him a parole officer with outstanding credentials. Because we know he's in need of those fairly regularly.
Yep. Sign
not
here.
bad.
Okay, the paperwork's on the sideline, mate.
What about any player getting sin bin for the Titans? We say, if you get off in the next 10 seconds,
We'll sign you up to another team.
or we'll offer you a premiership.
Yeah, could
Either
do that.
way. I mean,
With
they're both
another
great
team.
ideas.
Yep.
They'd
Well,
be
but
out like
clearly-
a fucking shot.
I mean, if you said to any player in the Titans, we'll offer you a premiership, they're going to go, yeah, fucking pull the other one, mate.
Yeah, well,
They're not going to believe it.
exactly. But I mean, they've never probably even heard the word premiership before, being Titans players. They're probably like, well, what's that?
What does that mean?
And then you'd have to sit them down, run them through a PowerPoint prezzo, say, look, it's what happens when successful teams get together.
Yeah. What's a successful team?
Yeah, they'd have a lot of questions, a lot of Q&A. In fact, that would probably chew up most of the 10 minutes. But I would say once you got that through to them, they'd probably be pretty jazzed about the idea.
Maybe we could, for someone like Blake Ferguson, hold a New South Wales winger jersey on the sideline. Say, here, come and get this, mate.
And then when he runs for it, you
Just
burn
take it away.
You just set it on fire and go, never again, champ. You're
Mate.
never playing again.
You were too slow.
Yeah, and you fucked up Origin camp because you didn't take it seriously. You and your fucking mate Dugan.
I don't know. Blake may have... I mean, look, let's cut him a little bit of slack. I mean, he was up against the Dugan. And the Dugan will Dugan anyone's chances at anything.
He's a bad influence, isn't he, Dugan?
Well, bad influence... Look up a picture of bad influence in the dictionary. And I know the dictionary doesn't have pictures, right? Don't write in.
Oh, my edition does.
Right.
But it's only got 9 entries. And
But
7 of them are vaginas, which is why I read it quite
I'm
regularly.
not sure that's a dictionary.
I don't know. What
It
is
might be
Does it start with a Playboy?
dick. Well, I think it's dictionary, but it's written DICK dash shinri. Yeah,
You might be right.
might be the
Probably
Playboy
not.
is.
It's an improper reference
Give it
material.
away. But look, I think someone like Josh Dugan. Maybe we could just have a race off. They get sent off. Adam Reynolds. We just have a tattoo parlour on the sideline.
Yeah.
Free tattoos.
Has he got any space left, though? At this stage, he's just tattooing his frenulum.
Has he got any soul left that's free of tattoo?
I don't know. I think with someone like Adam Reynolds, he's probably at this stage tattooing bone marrow because he started to do internal work because he's got nothing
That's an
left
interesting
on his
idea. That's an
nothing left on
interesting
his
idea.
skin.
I mean, why has no NRL player got a face tattoo yet?
And just done the old Mike Tyson.
Why?
Because it looks shit.
Yeah, I know that, but they all look shit. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it would probably be tougher to be in one of those like representative promotional ads if you've got like one of those sort of hectic gang tattoos over your left eyeball.
Maybe we don't go with a gang tattoo. Maybe we go with a tattoo of the company or product you're promoting
Okay.
on your face.
Right. And what happens when that contract expires?
I really like cheesels.
Okay.
Just a cheek with cheesels.
Okay. And a teardrop.
Yeah, I really like cheesels. Everyone would believe you.
I've killed for cheesels. I thought as well, Chip, for example, Angus Crichton, you could offer him his left finger back. Here you go. Come on, Gus.
Here it is.
Get off quickly.
Yep.
And we'll put this onto your left knuckle.
Mate, knuckle down and point this out.
Yep.
Yep.
In fact, if you want 11 fingers, if you get off really quickly.
Yeah, we'll give you an extra finger.
And an extra long penis. You
Yep.
can be like John C. Holmes.
Does he need one?
I don't know.
You're not sure?
I'm not going to ever ask him that.
Yeah.
Because he's bigger.
How's
than
your
me.
cock going, mate?
I'll never say that to him.
You know, I actually,
Stupid.
I actually was taking a shit once in a cubicle in a pub, right?
I'm glad you're inside the cubicle.
And I'm not kidding. I'm just laying down the foundations of a decent. I'm midway, so I've had a few. I've disturbed the water, okay, and I'm halfway through a decent movement, and all of a sudden this fucking Irish guy jumps over the next cubicle, looking down on me.
That's
And
disturbing.
I'm not kidding. He said to me, "Fuck, look at the size of the cock on you, eh?" And I just didn't quite know what to make of that.
Why was your cock exposed?
Well,
How do you shit?
you know, it's visible. It's visible from shitting distance. But and now, what really bothered me was that I didn't think that he was genuine. I just thought that was his line for when he does that. Like I wasn't the first.
You think he just has like a penchant for
Exactly.
leaning
So
over
he-
cubicles and
He wants to look at guys taking a shit, but he figures the best way to keep you cool about it is to compliment you on the size of your cock.
I guess, pray tell, did it work? Or did
Not
you
really.
bash him?
Not really. Well, the funny thing is, it's very difficult to get up and bash someone mid shit. Can't really do it.
Welcome back to the Voluntary Tackle. Now, the Denver test is coming up soon, Chip. I'm not sure if it's really created too much buzz in Australia, but England will be taking on New Zealand to see who is the world's fourth best team. Now, this is happening overseas, and it sort of made our podcast have a think about what other areas of the world can be potentially expanded upon. Now, the United States is clearly one market, but are we missing out, Chip, on other potentially lucrative international markets?
Well, we definitely are, and I'm glad you've brought this up because, you know, rugby league it doesn't really translate that well in hot climates, for my view. I know you've got your Brisbane teams, North Queensland. They've been good teams in the hot climate. Yeah, I understand that, but I like to see rugby league played in cold climates. Could we have a Siberian game?
I mean, look, it's not the first time the NRL has taken a game to a really cold, isolated place devoid of culture. Obviously, the Canberra Raiders have been playing for years, but I actually think the Antarctica or Siberia or these areas, they could be absolutely fertile ground for expansion.
Yeah, look, you're 100% right. Definitely Antarctica. I mean, you're never so glad of having decent studs.
It would be difficult to get traction.
At the same time, I just think those hits feel bigger.
They would, and I'd imagine, like, you know, when you put a kick through, you'd have to be very careful with your weighting.
I'd like to see what Andrew Johns would have done on the ice.
Well, he was a genius. I bet he'd do more on ice than Michael Slater did with dancing on ice. But look, I mean, cold climates is just one avenue, Chip. I mean, I don't know, potentially we should look to markets that no other sport is looking at. And that's why I'm suggesting war-torn Yemen.
Definitely, you're really going to see Addo Carr at his fastest.
I think so, especially when he's trying to outrun a mortar bomb.
Yeah, if he's under fire, he's going to be running.
As if he needs an extra excuse to be fast.
Yeah, but let's push some boundaries. How are you going to go for support play? Running into fire. That's the other thing, because if you make a break and you're running into the machine gun fire in the middle of Syria,
yeah,
and you're saying you're not going to be up on the politics, what's actually going on, what's happening on the ground.
You'd have to do a lot of game planning, wouldn't you?
Well, this is where your coach is going to come in.
But you're right, the coach would play a really pivotal role, Chip. I think you're completely right about that. In fact, they'd need to do their homework because, as we know, NRL teams coach a lot for under-pressure situations. And you wouldn't get more of an under-pressure situation than in a war-torn civil war situation. So, for example, I don't know, it's the 70th minute, you're down by 2, and your centre's just been abducted and ransomed off by ISIS.
Yep.
What do you do in that situation?
Well, I think
You'd probably go for a repeat set. I don't
think,
know. I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, try and find the in-goal area. I mean, you don't want to go dead because he's not going to like that.
No. You're down to 12 men at a minimum.
You know, at the same time, I think we could work some of this into the game. And I think one way we could start is with the bomb, and we could say, look, catch the bomb.
Yeah, they're by the way, they're very iffy about that word in that region. So you probably might have to rebrand that kick.
Or what I was thinking
Call it
is,
an up and under.
well, we could use the term bomb because they understand it, but we could put it in a positive light. And what I mean by that is to say, okay, if you catch a bomb, right, to our
Certainly
culture,
very counterintuitive.
that's known as diffusing the bomb. If you catch that bomb, it won't go off. If you drop that bomb, it's armed and it will kill everybody. I think you'd really find some passion and some drive and some real commitment into catching the ball, which I'd like to see from the fullbacks.
Talk about that's a hell of a pressure under the high ball.
I'd definitely like to see a state of origin franchise move to South Korea.
Well, tell you what, I love a good classic local derby.
One thing that I must admit I really enjoy about doing this podcast is feedback from our listeners. It's what keeps us going, and the show at the end of the day is really about you guys and girls out there listening to the podcast. So I don't want to use the dreaded words S followed by O because I may have inflated the currency on that one slightly, but I would like to say a big thank you to the biggest tiger for his feedback last week, and particularly the conversation that we had, which I think has been a big help to this week's podcast. And, mate, keep that feedback rolling in. We do love that. My evergreen favourite listener as well being the turtle.
I'll tell you what, the turtle is great. And before we get on to the turtle, a big shout out to the biggest tiger, who does have a great podcast. If you love NRL podcasts, get on board with Sports Best Friends. Their last episode, Can't Back Up, fabulous. And I don't like using the word fabulous because it makes me sound effeminate. So when I say fabulous, I fucking mean it.
Yeah, and definitely you're not one to come across as effeminate. But,
Only when I groom my nipples.
So also Turtle Wilson. Now, Turtle, mate, you know we love you.
What do you want to see from the turtle this week?
Mate, I'd like to see from the turtle how he feels about all this fucking upstairs review system, particularly in the Tigers game. I don't know whether the turtle saw the Tigers game, but
I'm sure he did.
Mate, we pretty much everyone out there in social media land, if you have any feedback for us, anything that you can suggest, anything that you'd like to mention to us about how we can improve the show or make it more listenable for you, we want to hear from you because it's all about you guys.
And there's no suggestion too silly or too offensive. In fact, if you were to suggest, for example, I want you to make more fun of Down syndrome people,
we'll do it.
I'd be against it. But
I want to do it.
that's more like Sylvester Stallone in Rocky. Yeah, I mean, that is just offensive. But what I'm saying is we'll take it on board, no matter how silly or offensive. We may not implement it, like Chip just did, but we'll certainly take it on board.
Look, we'll give it a go.
Maybe not. I mean, it depends what they say.
Look, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, not on air.
Well, yeah.
Another shout out has to go to Media Watch Mario. Big thanks to Media Watch Mario for being someone that interacts with the show. Clearly a massive lover of the NRL and NRL podcasts. If you want any recommendations for good NRL podcasts, we suggest going to the Twitter profile of Media Watch Mario because he certainly knows his shit.
Now, by the way, Mr. Media Watch Mario, my mum did love me, but she's no longer around, mate.
Another quick shout out has to go to Corey Farrell. Now, Corey Farrell, massive NRL head. If you're interested in a sort of quirky podcast that
delves into film. I know this is an NRL podcast, but head to the Brown Carpet, or that's at Brown Carpet Pod on Twitter. Very funny stuff and some pretty unique ideas fused together in the world of film. Get involved.
Now, can I ask a question? Is brown carpet's obviously in reference to red carpet. Now, is the red carpet to do with virgins and the brown carpet's to do with like a different type of virgin? I'm not sure. What.
Well, I think you're over-sexualising the idea, but
I don't mean to go all whiny on you.
No, please, it's fine. I having listened to a few of Corey's shows, and they are very funny, I think it's more about infusing ideas for film that would never normally make it. So you have the red carpet, which is like your traditional film, although this is the brown carpet, probably creating the tropes of shit.
It's probably the movie equivalent of the voluntary tackle.
Probably is, mate.
Yeah.
It's certainly we're great at shit tropes.
We're great at some things.
Yeah. Can't think of them, but well, that brings us to the end of the show, Chip, and it's always a very sad time because we certainly enjoy waxing lyrical about the game of rugby league. We love it very much, even though we are a pair of dickheads, essentially, aren't we?
Well, a pair is a bit strong, but there's certainly a dickhead element to the show.
I feel like you're saying I'm a dickhead and you're not.
Yeah, see, I would never actually say that.
Yeah, but the subtext is pretty loud and clear.
Well, that's for you to read into, and that really says more about you than me. But look, what I would like to do at the moment is to share with you something interesting I found this week, which is to do with politics, and we were mentioning before about Matthias Cormann.
Yep.
Now, what I found amazing is if you say Matthias Cormann slowly enough, it actually sounds like gullible.
Really?
Give it a go.
Right now? I'll do it off air. Maybe it's a bit like playing the Queen record backwards when
Yeah.
you hear the satanic verses.
If you don't get it, just say Matthias Cormann backwards, and that'll definitely do it.
Well, look, until next time, just do...
What Xander Risotto would do, and take a week off.
See you next time.